The marriage everyone envied. From the outside, Helena and Eduardo's marriage was the kind that made people sigh quietly. Friends said they were a perfect match. Neighbors whispered that they looked like a commercial couple. Family members spoke with pride about a relationship that seemed solid, mature, and built on respect. 5 years together. 5 years without scandals. 5 years believing that love could also mean stability. The apartment they shared reflected that image perfectly. Bright, airy, always filled with late afternoon sunlight. Framed photographs told their story: a honeymoon in Portugal, a winter trip to Buenos Aires, simple birthdays celebrated with wine and laughter. Helena liked that life. She was never naive, not even close. She worked, had her own income, her independence, her circle of friends, but she believed, maybe more than she should have, in partnership. Eduardo seemed like the right man. Polite, successful, attentive in public. The kind of man who held doors open and thanked waiters by name. The kind who posted photos with his wife and wrote thoughtful captions. At family gatherings, he held Helena's hand as if saying, "We're in this together." But there was something Helena would only understand later. Eduardo loved looking like a good husband. That didn't always mean being one. In the early years, everything worked. Long conversations, shared plans, a comfortable routine. But comfort, when neglected, turns into distraction. And it was in that silent space between what looked perfect and what truly was that things began to shift. Helena could never point to a single moment. There was no dramatic fight, no immediate discovery of betrayal. It was subtler than that, almost polite. Eduardo started coming home a little later. Nothing alarming. Traffic, he said. Meetings that ran long. His phone began vibrating more often. And strangely, it was always face down. Helena noticed everything, calmly. She believed mature relationships were built on conversation, not paranoia. So she didn't accuse, didn't invade, didn't confront him right away. She waited, because intelligent women know something very well. The truth always trips over its own confidence. When intuition doesn't scream, it whispers. Helena's intuition was never loud. It didn't come like an alarm. It arrived as a gentle, persistent discomfort, almost too polite to be taken seriously. That feeling that something is out of place, even when everything looks tidy. Eduardo remained kind. He still smiled. He still said love the same way. But small absences hid inside the details. He stopped asking about her day, replied to messages with calculated delays, and when he was home, his mind always seemed elsewhere. Helena noticed something else too. Eduardo began talking a lot about freedom. Everyone needs to feel alive sometimes, he would say casually. Routine swallows people whole. She partially agreed, but something about that phrase felt less like philosophy and more like a pre-written excuse. Her friends asked if everything was okay. She said yes, not out of denial, but because she didn't yet have proof, only perception, until one ordinary night changed everything. It was a regular Thursday. Helena had prepared dinner, nothing elaborate, just something warm and thoughtful. Eduardo arrived much later than usual. She sensed it the moment she heard the key turn. Men who are about to confess something important tend to arrive too early or too late, as if time itself could relieve the weight. He walked in unusually energized for someone who had supposedly spent all day in meetings. Perfectly pressed shirt, freshly reapplied cologne, that unfamiliar brightness in his eyes. Helena noticed everything. She said nothing. They sat at the table. He talked too much. She listened too carefully. Then, in the middle of a random sentence, Eduardo said something unnecessary. Sometimes I think we've matured so much that we forgot how to live. Helena slowly raised her eyes. "And what do you call living?" she asked calmly. He smiled, a smile far too comfortable. "I don't know, feeling something different." That was the moment Helena's intuition stopped whispering. It didn't scream, but it became impossible to ignore. She understood then that something was being rehearsed, that this conversation wasn't spontaneous. It was a warm-up. Still, Helena kept her composure. "If you want to talk about this, we can," she said. "But I prefer clarity over vague phrases." Eduardo nodded, changed the subject, smiled again. That night, lying beside him, Helena didn't fall asleep right away. She stared at the ceiling, replayed small scenes, small absences. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She thought, because when an elegant woman realizes she's being deceived, she doesn't chase the truth. She lets the truth come to her. And Eduardo, without knowing it, was already on his way to learning the most expensive lesson of his life, the confession. There was no coming back from. Helena woke up the next morning with a strange sense of calm. It wasn't peace, it was clarity. When doubt disappears, only truth remains, and she already knew something irreversible was about to happen. Eduardo left early, as he had been doing for weeks. He gave her a quick kiss on the cheek, one of those automatic gestures, and promised to call later. Helena smiled politely and said nothing. She was tired of vague promises. She spent the day working, handling meetings, keeping her routine intact. On the outside, everything looked normal. On the inside, she was arranging her thoughts like someone organizing drawers before moving out. That evening, Eduardo came home earlier than usual. Helena noticed it the moment she heard the door unlock. Men who are about to confess something important often arrive too early, as if they want to get rid of the weight as fast as possible. He walked in, dropped his briefcase on the couch, and took a deep breath. "We need to talk." Helena nodded. No surprise. She sat at the table, crossed her legs with elegance, and waited. Eduardo began with long sentences full of explanations. He talked about routine, about emotional distance, about how things change. Helena listened in silence until he finally reached the point. "I got involved with someone else." The sentence landed softly in the room. No echo, no scream, no tears. Helena simply took a breath. "Involved how?" she asked, her voice steady. Eduardo looked away. "It happened. It wasn't planned. It doesn't mean I don't love you." She tilted her head slightly, examining the absurdity of that equation. "You betrayed me, and you're trying to convince me that nothing really changed." He rushed to justify himself. "Don't dramatize, Helena. It was just a phase. You're mature. You'll understand." The word mature sounded like an insult disguised as a compliment. Helena stood up slowly, walked toward the window. The late afternoon sun poured in, golden as always. "Do you know what I understand, Eduardo?" He stayed silent. "I understand that you betrayed me," she continued. "And that, on top of that, you believe I should accept it because I've always been understanding." Eduardo tried to smile, nervous. "I knew you'd react calmly, like this." That was when Helena turned around. Her eyes weren't angry. They were final. "Calm is something I've always had. What you never realized is that calm is not submission." Eduardo swallowed hard. "I just wanted to be honest." He tried. Helena smiled faintly. "Honesty without responsibility isn't a virtue. It's convenience." She picked up her bag, walked to the bedroom door and stopped. "Tonight I won't be sleeping here." Eduardo's eyes widened. "Are you going to make a scene now?" Helena turned one last time. "No, Eduardo. A scene would be screaming, 'This is just the beginning of your lesson.'" And she left. She didn't scream, she thought. Helena spent the night in a small, elegant hotel near her office. Nothing extravagant, nothing impulsive. She ordered tea, took a long shower, and sat on the bed with her laptop open. She didn't cry. She didn't call friends. She didn't ask for advice. She planned. The first thing she did was write everything she felt, not to send, but to organize. Then she separated facts from emotions. Fact: Eduardo betrayed her. Fact: he expected forgiveness. Fact: he underestimated who she was. The next morning, Helena woke up early, put on a light-colored outfit, applied a soft perfume, and left. Her first stop was a lawyer recommended by a colleague. Helena didn't arrive emotional. She arrived focused. I want to understand my rights. I want to know what I can do without chaos. The lawyer listened carefully, asked technical questions, and answered clearly. Helena left lighter than she had arrived, not because she was happy, but because she was in control. Over the following days, she kept contact with Eduardo minimal. Short messages, neutral replies. That started to bother him. "Aren't you going to argue?" he asked in a voice message. "Aren't you going to fight? Aren't you going to demand anything?" Helena replied with a single text. "When I have something to say, you'll know." Meanwhile, she organized her life. She gathered documents, reviewed contracts, checked accounts. Nothing rushed, nothing fueled by anger. She knew elegant revenge is not fast, it's precise. Eduardo, on the other hand, began to feel the weight of silence. He tried to get closer, sent flowers, wrote long messages. Helena read them all. She replied to none. And in that empty space where explanations and forgiveness used to live, Eduardo began to realize that something was different. He still believed everything would work out, that Helena would get over it. What he didn't know was that she had already turned the page mentally. And when a woman does that, everything else is just logistics. If you enjoy stories where strength comes from elegance, subscribe to Stories We Tell. The story continues. The elegant revenge begins to take shape. Helena had always believed that important decisions require three things: time, silence, and precision. She had all three. While Eduardo tried to guess what was happening, like someone staring at a chessboard without knowing the rules, Helena organized every detail with the calm of someone who had already won internally. No scandals, no public exposure, no indirect messages. She knew that the best response to someone who expects drama is not giving them a show. Helena returned to the apartment at a carefully chosen hour. She didn't announce herself. She didn't ask permission. She walked through the rooms with the gaze of someone revisiting a place that no longer felt like home. She separated what belonged to her methodically. Books, clothes, documents, personal items, everything placed into discrete boxes. Eduardo arrived later. He found the house far too organized for someone who was supposedly in crisis. "What's all this?" he asked, trying to sound calm. Helena smiled lightly. "Organization." He laughed, uneasy. "You're exaggerating, Helena. We can still talk this through." She nodded. "We can. Just not today." Eduardo tried to step closer, to touch her arm. Helena stepped back, graceful, firm. "Don't confuse politeness with openness," she said quietly. That night, Helena didn't sleep there. She slept peacefully. Over the next few days, Eduardo grew impatient. He called, sent long messages, alternated between guilt and charm. Helena replied only when necessary, always with short, polite, definitive sentences. "Aren't you going to fight for our marriage?" he asked in a dramatic voice message. She answered with refined humor. "Fighting is for people at war. I'm just closing a chapter." Meanwhile, Helena took care of herself. She returned to Pilates, reconnected with friends who didn't romanticize betrayal, scheduled unhurried coffees. Eduardo, on the other hand, began to feel something he hadn't expected: discomfort. He was used to being forgiven. He wasn't used to being ignored with class, and that completely disarmed him. He thinks he's in control, but he isn't. Eduardo always believed he could manage difficult situations. He was good with words, good with explanations, good at sounding remorseful when needed. That's why Helena's elegant silence felt to him like a temporary pause. "Give her time," he told a friend. "She's rational. She always has been." What he failed to realize was that rationality isn't waiting, it's deciding. Helena scheduled a final conversation at a discreet, well-lit cafe. Nothing romantic, nothing tense. Eduardo arrived confident, wearing the smile of someone who believed everything would work out. "It's good to see you," he said, pulling out a chair. Helena replied politely. "Let's get straight to the point." He frowned. "I've thought about it," he began. "We can try again. I'll end things with her. I promise." Helena tilted her head slightly, as if listening to something curious. "It's interesting that you call that an attempt," she replied, "because to me, loyalty isn't a rehearsal." Eduardo let out an awkward laugh. "You've always been very demanding," she smiled. "And you've always confused standards with self-respect." Silence fell between them. Helena placed an envelope on the table. "What's this?" he asked. "Organization," she replied, repeating the word softly. Inside were documents, agreements, and a short handwritten note. "Eduardo, you wanted freedom. I don't argue with choices. I respect consequences. I wish you happiness. Far from me." He read it, his face draining of color. "You've already decided everything?" he asked, almost whispering. Helena took a sip of coffee. "I decided the moment you thought betraying me was negotiable." Eduardo tried to argue, but there was no space left. Helena stood up, put on her sunglasses, and said with light humor, "Don't worry, you'll survive. You always survive bad choices, don't you?" And she walked away. Eduardo stayed there, frozen, with the uncomfortable feeling that he had lost something important, not just a marriage, but his illusion of control. And for the first time, he understood. Helena wasn't reacting. She was finalizing his silent fall. Eduardo always believed time would eventually work in his favor. That had been his pattern. People cooled down, conflicts lost intensity, and he would reappear with the right words at the right moment. There was always a second chance waiting for him. This time, time worked quietly, against him. In the first days after the cafe conversation, Eduardo kept up appearances. He told friends that things were settling down, said Helena just needed space, claimed she was rational, mature, and that everything would soon return to normal. But nothing returned. Helena didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't ask for explanations. The apartment felt too big, too quiet. Objects that once went unnoticed now felt heavy. Her favorite mug, the books arranged by color, the soft perfume that still seemed to linger in the air. Eduardo tried to stay busy. He went out more, posted smiling photos, made sure to look fine. But truth doesn't hold for long when it isn't shared with anyone. The woman he had called just a phase began to demand more. She wanted presence, promises, plans. Eduardo realized, too late, that he had traded something solid for something fragile and loud. Then came the simplest blow, and the most painful. One afternoon, scrolling through social media, he saw a photo of Helena. She was sitting at a bright cafe somewhere in Europe, sunglasses on, hair tied simply, a calm smile on her face. The caption read, Peace is always worth the choice. No indirect messages, no accusations. That hurt more than any public exposure ever could. Friends started asking about Helena. Colleagues commented on how well she looked, centered, light. Eduardo understood without anyone spelling it out that he had lost something rare. A woman who never needed to prove her worth to anyone, and it was there, not in a fight, not in a scream, that he truly fell, alone, in silence. With a heavy conscience and no audience left to blame, with class she turned the page. Helena never called it a restart. She called it continuity. She didn't feel her life had been interrupted, only redirected. The trip she took wasn't an escape. It was a choice. She walked through unfamiliar streets with the same calm posture she had always carried, read books in cafes, watched people pass by, learned to enjoy her own company even more. Helena understood something important there. When you respect yourself, the world follows. She didn't speak badly about Eduardo, didn't share details, didn't turn pain into a spectacle. When people asked, she answered politely, "We chose different paths," and it was true. Slowly, Helena returned home, to a new home, a smaller, lighter space with big windows and plants near the light. Every object chosen with intention. Nothing there spoke of loss. Everything spoke of possibility. One day she ran into Eduardo by chance. Same neighborhood, same sidewalk. He looked older, more tired, less confident. "You look well," he said, almost as a statement. Helena smiled gently. "I'm at peace." There was no tension, no verbal revenge. The conversation ended quickly. Helena continued on her way without looking back, because turning the page, when done with class, doesn't require long explanations. It requires courage, and Helena had it. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Stories We Tell, leave a like, and share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. Your support helps us keep creating stories about love, respect, and second chances, because stories that touch the heart deserve to be told and remembered. Thank you for being here. See you in the next story.